So I've got 10 o'clock and I'm showing 23 people on the webcast. I think maybe waiting a couple more minutes might not be a bad idea, but I want to thank all of you for joining today. Let's give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, it's about 2.5 minutes after. If anybody else joins, we can catch them up. For those of you who joined late, when there are a certain number of people on these webcasts, it automatically mutes new people as they join. If you're on the phone and you need to unmute to speak, it's *6. If you're on the webcast and you need to unmute, it's at the bottom of your screen. You may have to move your mouse a little bit to get it to pop up, but there's a toolbar at the bottom where you can unmute yourself with the microphone icon. So with that, this is the first ever meeting of the ESInet users group. I have up on here a preliminary agenda to get us started. We're not necessarily restricted to this agenda, but it was a way to get things going. And one of the first things we're going to have to do is to have an election of officers. But before I do that, I want to start with a roll call. According to the charter for the ESInet users group, we need to have each 911 authority gets a voting member. And I can see who's on the call, but to correlate that with 911 authorities, I'm going to go ahead and read through and ask that you let me know if you are representing that 911 authority. Adams County E911 Authority Board. Nothing heard. Arapahoe County Emergency Communications Authority. I saw Bruce. I assume you're representing them. Archuleta County 911. Nothing heard. Baca County Emergency Telephone Authority Board. Nothing heard. Bend Kiowa County 911 Board. Nothing heard. Boulder Regional.
Yeah, I'm here, Daryl.
Patty. Chaffee County 911 Authority Board.
I'm here, Daryl.
I heard Daryl Pratt.
That's correct.
Cheyenne County Emergency Telephone Authority. Nothing heard. City of Aurora. City of Thornton.
Sean Cheers here.
Thank you, Sean. Communications Advisory Board. Don't know who that is. I will have to look that up. Crowley County E911 Authority Board. Custer County E911 Authority Board. Delta County Board of County Commissioners. Denver E911 Authority Board. Dolores County. What was that?
Hey, Daryl.
Yeah.
This is Bruce. Sorry for Arapahoe. I could not get unmuted, but yes, I am the rep.
Great, thank you.
I'm also proxy until Jennifer Kirkland can join the call for Eagle County.
Great, got it. I didn't hear anything for Dolores County, Douglas County. And Bruce, I'm going to put you here for Eagle County until Jennifer is able to join us, and then I'll change that. Eastern Rio Blanco. El Paso Teller. Elbert. La Plata. Fremont. Garfield.
Carl Stevens.
Thank you, Carl.
It looks like Mike Cook is on the line.
Yes, he might be. And by the way, if you guys are having trouble unmuting, you can also use the chat feature on the webcast if you're on there. Mike, since you are on the line and you are the representative, I'm going to go ahead and put your name here. Gilpin? Grand? Grand Junction?
Jeff Bachman's here for proxy for Todd Holsworth.
I'm sorry, Jeff Bachman for who? Jeff, can you repeat that, please?
Sorry if you can hear me. I'm proxy for Todd Holsworth.
Oh, okay, great. Tell me if I misspelled your name. I can fix it later. Anyone for Grand Junction? And in the chat, I have, I see Grand Junction here, Paula Creasy and Jeremy Duncan. I'll put Paula. And then I saw in the chat, Keith Robinson is representing Gunnison Hinsdale. Huerfano? Jackson? Jefferson? I think I saw Jeff Irvin on here, or maybe I imagined it. Anyone for Jefferson? Okay, maybe I imagined it. Kit Carson? Lake? Larimer, I think I saw Kimberly.
Yep, Daryl, I'm on. Thanks.
Los Animas? Lincoln? Logan?
Stan Kaiser.
Stan Kaiser, is that for Logan?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Moffett? Montezuma? Montrose? Morgan?
Jeanette Martin.
Thank you. Otero? Uray?
Daryl, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Paula Creasy. I'm having trouble unmuting myself as well. I'm here and Jeremy Duncan is as my proxy.
Great. Thank you. Didn't hear anything for Ouray, Park County. Phillips County. Pitkin County. I know Brett Loeb RSVP'd. Pitkin. Okay. Browers. Pueblo County. Pueblo City. Routt County. San Juan County. San Luis Valley. That'd be Alamosa CSP. San Miguel. Sedgwick. Summit. Washington, Yuma. Weld County.
Janine, Chair for Washington County.
Thank you, Janine. Weld County.
Mike Wallace for Weld.
Thank you, Mike. Western Rio Blanco. Did I miss anybody? Any 911 authorities that I did not get a representative for that are on the call?
Jerry DeVal said he's from Summit, or he's with Summit. Said in the chat.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Got two separate screens and didn't see it. Okay, that's 16 representatives out of 58. We only need 10 for a quorum according to the charter, but I think we've got some room for building participation in the future. But it does mean we have a quorum. For those of you who've looked at the agenda already, you'll see there's a link on here. If you're attending, please sign in. That'll take you to a sign-in page specific to this meeting. There's a sign-in sheet that'll show at the top, and then at the bottom is a form that you can fill in, and it'll put your name right on there. It's in lieu of having a sign-in sheet to pass around the room, since we don't have a room to be in. The next thing I wanted to do was go over the users group purpose and the charter. So the reason why this group was created, for those of you who haven't been able to follow along with the tariff proceeding or the task force meetings, is that it was suggested as part of the settlement between the parties in the ESInet tariff proceeding. The idea was to have a group that could then get together representing local 911 governing bodies and discuss the future development and feature enhancements of the ESInet that is going to be rolled out starting October of this year and will be rolled out to all of the PSAPs if the schedule holds by October of next year. And so to do that, we created a charter, and this charter was brought to the 911 task force and approved by the task force at our last meeting on May 9th. And for the purpose section of that charter, we basically just copied directly out of the settlement where it lists the purposes of the group. So the user group will be formed for governing bodies and PSAPs and PUC staff. It will interface with CenturyLink on topics related to services under the tariff. Its purpose is to improve communication regarding ESInet service on topics such as, but not limited to, the following: ESInet implementation. So a big part of the purpose of this group may be just to monitor the implementation over that 13-month period from October of this year to October of next year and make sure that all goes smoothly and work out any problems that come up during that time. Statewide transition plans. Common issues, discuss common questions or concerns regarding ESInet or other basic emergency service issues. Change management, discuss potential changes to ESInet tariffs or other basic emergency services. Dispute mediation, disputes regarding ESInet services or other basic emergency service issues may be raised informally here. other issues. The purpose of the user group is to improve communication regarding ESInet service and services among BESPs, PSAPs, and authorities, and the Commission, so any issues regarding next generation 911 service features or functions may be discussed in the user group. So that gives you a general overview of what the purpose of the group is. In the task force, it was decided that each 911 governing body should be a voting member. Each 911 governing body may designate one individual to serve as their representative and appoint one or more proxies to vote for them in their absence. And that's the reason why I added those fields to the 911 authority profiles that have recently been going out, asking people to fill in those fields for who your representative is on this group, as well as who the proxies are. Staff of the Colorado Public Utilities Commission and representatives of the BESP providing ESInet service shall also serve as non-voting members. Meetings are considered open, but the committee reserves the right to enter into closed sessions. Attendance by 10 or more 911 governing bodies is considered a quorum, so we do have a quorum today. Votes will pass by a majority of the 911 governing bodies present or voting by proxy. If you guys want to make any changes to this charter after we get some officers elected and we have some discussions, those then have to be approved by the task force, since this is considered a committee of the task force. But generally, I think you're free to make whatever changes you need to this beyond that. User group PSAP forum. In addition to regular meetings, commission staff will maintain a users group for the users group, an online discussion forum for ongoing discussions regarding PSAP users. So in other words, I'm going to create an online discussion forum for the PSAP members to participate in. And that won't be restricted necessarily to the voting member for each 911 authority. It'll be more of a place for the PSAPs to discuss issues and hopefully help come up with solutions for each other with anything related to the ESInet, or really potentially for anything else that the PSAPs want to discuss. Officers, which we're going to have to work on today, there should be a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary, and we'll take nominations for that here in a little bit. Voting members or PUC staff may hold any of the officer positions. If any officer is excluded from a closed session, that officer shall delegate their duties to a participating individual. So if it's a PUC staff member and they ask me not to be part of a closed session because they want to talk about the PUC, then I'll have to pass that off, assuming if I were a member. Officers shall be elected by the voting members of the user group at the first meeting of the user group, and then annually at the first meeting of the calendar year. So after this, we will only be, whoever the officers are today are only stuck in that position for the next 5 months, and then in January there will be another election. If there's a midterm vacancy, the voting members of the users group shall at their next meeting vote to appoint a replacement. And then one of the things we want to talk about today is meeting format and frequency. The charter only requires once a quarter, but I'm assuming that you guys are going to want to meet more often than that. I'm thinking at least once a month for the duration of the migration. Maybe I'm wrong, but that'll be a topic of discussion today. And then we can also talk about if we want to continue having them remotely like we are today, or if you want to have in-person with a remote option. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the charter as it's written right now? You can see it's very short. For the purpose of the organization. Okay, I think we're good. It looks like a few people might have joined late. Did anybody join late after we did roll call? Okay, not hearing anything. The next thing on the agenda then is election of officers. And what I'm planning on doing is taking nominations and then sending you by email all an electronic ballot, and then we can see what the results are after everyone's had a chance to fill out that ballot on this call. Does anybody object to that approach? In that case, do I have any nominations for chair?
I would nominate Bruce Romero.
Thank you, Carl. Bruce, do you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Any other nominations for chair? Going once? Going twice? Do I have any nominations for vice chair? Anyone at all?
Daryl, this is Kimberly. I'd be willing to do vice chair.
Okay. Thank you, Kimberly. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Do I have any nominations for secretary?
I would nominate you if you're willing to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? I won't take it personally. Well, in that case, since we only have one candidate for each position, I don't know that we need to hold a vote other than maybe just a general vote to accept the nominations as a slate. Does anybody want to make that motion?
This is Carl. I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion from Carl to accept the nominations as a slate. Does anyone second that motion?
Paula Creasy.
Daryl Pratt will second.
I heard a couple people, but I heard Paula Creasy, so I'm going to give her the second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone oppose? Okay, motion passes. And before we go on, I see Dave Straley sent a chat message saying he's on for Clear Creek. And where is Clear Creek in this list? I will make sure that you get added to the list, Dave.
I think you're there on the advisory board.
Just this one, Communications Advisory Board, is that you guys? Okay, I'll put you there. I'll make sure that that matches up to Clear Creek County since it doesn't have a place name in it. Bruce, do you want to take it over from here, or do you want me to continue running the agenda for today?
Sorry for the length of time it takes me to unmute. If you want to go ahead and continue it for today, Daryl, that'd be great.
Okay. So I had two topics for new business. The first one was meeting schedule and format. I think my recommendation would be to do at least monthly to start. Does anybody have any alternative suggestions or different thoughts on that?
I agree. I think monthly for now is good.
Anyone else? Do we want to set a set date and time monthly, or do we want to do like scheduling polls and try to just find whatever time works best for people?
I would prefer
As far
something.
as time goes, it'll be late morning like this one.
So I had a couple people. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, sorry about that. I would agree. I think we need to have a set date and time instead of trying to do a doodle poll. I know that's hard, but I see the meetings being for 12 months, if not longer, then reevaluating after that how frequent they are, and then possibly even going every other week once we get into the migrations of all the PSAPs. So if we can set that now, that way we can start to move schedules around and hopefully get better attendance.
Okay. Well, if we do it based on today, this is the second Wednesday at 10 a.m., would that work for everyone?
This is Matt. I think that's good.
I agree. This is Paula.
This is Daryl. I agree.
Okay. And I suppose if this time doesn't work for for someone, they're not on the call to tell us. So hopefully they can get a proxy assigned.
This is Dave Straley. Until January, the second Wednesdays will not work for me.
Okay. Do you want to suggest a different date and time, Dave?
Third Wednesdays would work, mostly.
What does everyone think of the third Wednesday at 10 a.m.? That would also have the benefit of separating it a little bit from the task force meeting, which is on the second Thursday of odd months.
That sounds reasonable.
Does anybody object to the third Wednesday? Okay. So we'll say third Wednesday, 10 a.m. Do we want to try to start having meetings in person while also having a remote option like we do the task force meetings, or do you want to keep them remote only?
This is Kimberly. My preference would be for now, we do this way to maximize attendance, but we may need to establish a room and get together as we start tackling topics, issues, challenges, etc.
So remote only for now, but keep it open for the possibility of an in-person later if needed?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Does anybody disagree?
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
If we do the in-person meetings, it would be helpful for those that might want to travel to do it, those in-person meetings the day before the 911 task force meeting as well. Just something to think about in the future, or maybe for a fall meeting, perhaps.
I think that's a good idea. If we do start moving to in-person meetings, maybe we can try to combine them with another meeting like the task force.
And I agree with Kimberly, is just get us started by doing on the phone meetings, but I think that in-person meetings will be very valuable going forward.
Sounds good. Any other thoughts? Okay, so the next meeting would be, if we're looking at the third Wednesday, that would be August 21st at 10 a.m. People want to put that on their calendar, but I'll also send out a repeating calendar invite. Next item was topics for future discussion. And I think, given that this is the first meeting, I don't know that we're going to be able to get into a lot of detail today on specific topics, but I think it would be a good time to kind of put things on maybe a parking lot list for future agenda items. And I'm probably overstepping my bounds a little bit here. Bruce, if you feel like you want to try to dive into anything particular today, we can certainly do that. But I at least wanted to kind of get a list of potential items for future meetings.
No, I think that's a good idea. I don't know that there's a ton of issues to tackle today, but if anybody has anything, certainly we can discuss if it's a burning issue.
So one thing that one of the PSAPs brought up to me was the fact that there are some hidden costs with migration that we apparently weren't aware of until fairly recently when CenturyLink started contacting some of the PSAPs and telling them that they required a separate electrical connection for the installation. Kimberly, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, so...
Well, I know they've contacted you already.
Right, we did. Maybe that's a good place to start, is to also talk about the status of where everything is at. So just from a big picture perspective, we were contacted by CenturyLink to do a site survey walkthrough. The person that came out to do that was a third-party contractor, so a contractor that CenturyLink brought in for the purpose of these site surveys. A bit disorganized, person didn't really know much about the project, was really going out and almost feeling like it was a CPE deployment type of conversation versus this ESInet handoff. But we worked through it, received a PowerPoint and some diagrams, and what was surprising to us was the amount of hardware they're going to be installing at the PSAPs. And we're not going to need an LNG, we're IP, but it's still going to be 20 U's of equipment. It's a pretty significant amount of space, but then they also indicated that an electrical requirement would be to have that 20 U's of equipment on its own circuit, own electrical within our back room. So instead of plugging it into a plug that's fed by UPS and generator, we actually have to have a completely separate circuit ran. That's going to be a cost, and there's a time factor there. So that was surprising. We did get on a conference call with them and challenge that a bit, just to see, and their response was, no, that's standard, that's required. That way, if they need to kill power to that particular 20 U's of equipment, they can do that without impacting the rest of the room, and so there is going to be an electrical cost for everybody.
Kimberly, that 20 U's, that's about a half a rack, right?
It's about 3/4, so a little bit over half, but yes. So from a footprint perspective, it's pretty significant, and some PSAPs are fine. I think it'll be fine, but just being sensitive to space and rack space, I know that if I was to put that much equipment in some of my smaller PSAPs, I wouldn't have a place to put it.
Well, and I also know that they said they could use our rack space that's already there, or they will provide a rack if you don't have that. But also, you know, like you said, the footprint, some may just not physically have that room.
That's correct. Yep, if you have rack space, you can just point out the rack you want it, and they'll install it there, or they will bring in a rack if you don't have a rack and you have enough floor space for them to install it. So just a couple of pieces of those intricate details that we were made aware of.
So one thing I'm going to do is put a copy of the ESInet tariff in the folder for this group, so you guys can have easy access to it. But it'd be interesting to look through the PSAP requirements section of the tariff and see how these sort of requirements fit into that, and whether or not that was specifically stated in the tariff. I off the top of my head, I can't say if they were.
And Daryl, do you also want to put that PowerPoint I sent over to you that they gave to us that shows the rack diagram pictures? Or maybe that's already in there.
Sure, if I can remember where I put it, but I can put it in the folder.
Yeah,
I can't put it up right now because I don't know where it is, but I'll find it.
And I could always resend it too. That way everyone can take a look at what that expectation is. Has anybody else done a walkthrough with CenturyLink on their deployments?
I have not yet. When is your where do you land in the schedule, Kimberly, for deployment?
Yeah, that's what surprised me. We don't go until November. Order date is in August, but as soon as they contacted us, we just said, yeah, you bet, we'll get this scheduled. How soon do you want to come out? But I thought it was interesting that they were already doing that site survey walkthrough with us.
Yeah.
Daryl. So Bretza did have a walkthrough too.
And we were told the same thing. We need about half to 3/4 of a rack. That's going to be interesting to find space for.
Yeah, so we'll share that PowerPoint, put that in the folder. That way everyone can take a look at it. And then another concern that we had, and I don't really know how to get my arms around this yet, but I think everyone needs to be aware of it. And there were certain points of failure that are being introduced that goes against best practices. And we're not talking about difficult things to fix, but for example, having a critical piece of equipment being installed that only has one power source versus having 2 power sources. I mean, those are standards of what we use on our equipment. Their map of a piece of equipment called an NIU, it has diverse cards inside of it, but one NIU casing. And if that NIU goes down, then we would lose all of our 911s, all of our 911 entry points. And that's just their standard. That's their standard, is to have diverse cards, but all inside one physical piece of hardware. So that's the kind of stuff I think this group needs to talk about, lay it up against the tariff of what's required, what's in best practice, and make sure that we're getting what we're paying for or what they're supposed to be installing.
This is Daryl. I agree. I think those are the appropriate topics for this group, at least while the initial migration is starting. There may be other things that this group wants to talk about for after the migration, but certainly during the migration, I think these are your primary concerns. I've written all of these down. What I'll do is create a document that sort of lists all of the outstanding items to be discussed so that we don't lose track of any of these. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the list? And by the way, the charter and the settlement for this group called for CenturyLink to be a part of the group. The reason why they're not here today, I'm going to take the primary blame for that, is because I created a email list for all the voting members, and that's what I used to send out the invites. But because they're not voting members, they didn't get invited until yesterday when it was pointed out to me that I had inadvertently left them off. So hopefully they'll be able to join us on future calls, because if not, we're going to have a hard time having these discussions. Does anybody else have any thoughts or topics? I'm sorry, go ahead, Kimberly.
No, I'm just curious, did we get Douglas County on the call yet? Because they're first, so I'm just curious. Their order date was July 3rd, so their order should already be placed, and I'm just wondering if that happened, and then Littleton's placement of the order is in 2 days.
Yeah, I don't see, I haven't heard from Douglas. Douglas, have you joined the call? Douglas County? And then Littleton is that yours, Bruce?
Yes. No, we have not been approached yet. I do know that CenturyLink has been talking about shuffling the schedule a little bit because for whatever reason, all of my PSAPs were listed separately. So we're moving those not to an undetermined date so far to do all of mine at the same time rather than one at a time.
During the regional ESInet meeting in Montrose yesterday, CenturyLink mentioned that they might be going first with Aurora, I think. And that's out of sync with the schedule, but they ended up working, I want to say it was with Aurora as a first trial run. And so they haven't actually started yet, was the impression I got.
Wouldn't they need to file an amendment and get that in front of the commission, Daryl, to change the schedule?
I was just going to say that. I remember there's something in the tariff saying that they can file updates without doing a full amendment to the tariff. They can file updates to the commission on the schedule. I don't remember how often it says they have to do that, but I'll look that up.
Yeah, there was flexibility built in without having to redo the tariff for the scheduling.
But I think if we don't agree with their dates, there's a process. I mean, if we don't
Right.
agree and CenturyLink agrees with us, then it's okay. But if then we have to take it to the commission for at least their approval, I thought. But
That is correct.
yeah.
So if you guys don't agree with the changes, but even if they change it and you both agree, I think they need to update the commission with the new schedule.
But then Patty Longmont's order is supposed to go in 7 days. So when they did their walkthrough, did you guys also go through and place an order?
I didn't go through the walkthrough, but in our meeting, I don't remember them saying that they placed any order. I could find out here pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm just curious on how that process works so this group can talk through it, tackle it, and then be prepared for the next PSEP that's up.
Right.
Daryl, this is Deanie.
Yes.
I'm on. Did you have a question?
Yes. So Deanie, has CenturyLink contacted Douglas County yet about your migration?
We had a meeting initially in April, and we've had a few discussions. Are they on the line? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm a little late
No,
here.
that's all right. No, they're not on the line, but
okay.
They will be on future calls, hopefully.
Okay. I'm not sure what I should say.
I am recording this.
Okay. We've had not good communication, I guess is one way I could put it. And apparently, I'm sorry, I need to be careful what I say. I'm still waiting for them to let us know that we're not the first ones. I heard through a rumor. So
okay.
Communication has not been good in the process.
Okay. That is good to know.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the purpose of this group, that we need to tackle that and give that feedback to them and let them know they need to improve that.
Yep.
Yes, they do. We're getting ready to have to reach out to them and with some additional questions, but I'm not sure what I should say at this point. We have concerns.
Well, and I think, Denny, if this is all the 911 authorities, and with or without CenturyLink here, I mean, even if they were on the phone call, we're not going to be able to fix these problems, in my opinion, unless we're very open and just can lay it out on the table and work through it and work together to help solve the problems. Because whatever you're experiencing, my guess is Littleton may experience the same, and Longmont, and on down the list. And so if we can work together to help solve that issue.
Right. And I'm sorry. I'm not sure why I'm even reluctant to say anything other than I just worried about how it'd be perceived. But honestly, I don't really care anymore. This is super important. Mm-hmm. And so I will spare all the little details in between, but we as a group for Douglas County proposed several questions, and the response back from Wes Horn was very rude and disrespectful to me, and I addressed that with him, and then he backed down a little bit. And we have yet to have answers to all of the questions, which I would assume every one of the authorities would have as well. And so we're waiting for answers. I think they took offense to the way it was asked, I guess. I don't really know. They're just normal questions, and they could have easily responded and said, you could look at the tariff, and the tariff will answer some of these questions. It would have been as simple as that, but instead they took a different path, and were, in my opinion, disrespectful. So it didn't start out well. And that's not the way we intended it to go. We're just asking questions that we need to know, that any authority needs to know before they transition. We have yet to have any information, and what I have heard is that from someone else, not even directly to us, no response directly to Douglas County, is that they didn't like the questions we asked, and so they decided to go with someone else first.
I don't think they can do that, Daryl.
So there's our issue. We're waiting. I'm hearing this secondhand. Now I'm hearing it from here in this meeting. I'm sorry I'm late to join, but that's kind of where we are. So we're kind of in a limbo spot and not getting a real comfortable impression off the get-go to work with them.
Well, and Denny, I would say if you have to ask 20 questions that they've already answered in different menus, then you ask the 20 different questions. I mean, we're all going to have the same questions, and we're going to need to have some patience from them to us. And I know when we had to get on a call with them to go through and ask questions about, well, what is this device? And dive into the diagram because it wasn't making sense to us, and asking about single points of failure and why are they introducing one power supply that will crash if it can crash. The housing crashes and we lose all of our access into 911. Just certain questions that you're right, it's going to be relevant for everybody.
Exactly. So that's exactly what has happened, and I haven't shared everything with my board yet. But I will when necessary at our next meeting. But we're extremely disappointed, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to proceed yet.
So, Deanie, what the tariff says about schedule changes is deviations from the schedule may be agreed upon in writing between the company and the customer. So if you haven't got anything in writing, presumably you're still on track for October 1st for your migration date. And if agreement cannot be reached regarding deviation from the schedule or whether the service is available for use, either the customer or the company shall have the right to petition the commission to resolve the disagreement. So if they do try to change your migration date and you do not agree with that change, you have the right to petition the commission to resolve it.
Okay.
Well, and I guess, and I would like this group to really hold firm on what's written here that's in the tariff, because, for example, I look at the projects, our capital replacement projects, our CAD project, our Viper upgrades, all of our projects, we are moving around this tariff schedule because we don't want to have this major project going on at the same time. And so I don't want them to just loosely make decisions about shifting without having a formal process and then agreeing in conversation with the customers about this. This is too important and too big of a deal, and for us it's an all-hands approach. So that's concerning if they're not communicating.
I would agree.
So, hey, Daryl, it seems like from that, perhaps we should start a lessons learned document early on. And I did check with my team. The walkthrough was 3 weeks ago. It's unknown if any equipment was ordered. There was a guy named Paul. That's all they knew.
Guy named Paul from CenturyLink.
Yeah.
Paul is
and
the
one
same
more
person
thing.
that we worked with as well, Patty. But yeah, he's like a subcontractor with CenturyLink.
And then I couldn't get off mute fast enough. When you were talking about other costs, I believe our SIP cost for Viper, I think it was going to be $35,000, and we also need to spend about $19,000 for the recorder to get it up to speed.
Right. And equipment that you need to upgrade in your PSAP was always considered to be really the PSAP or the authority's concern, because you do have the option of the legacy PSAP gateway. But if there are costs just for getting the the equipment in the door to even deliver it, and those costs are there whether you're using the legacy PSAP gateway or not. I think the PSAPs need to know about that at the very least, but we also need to compare that to the tariff and see whether that was even called out. And I will do that. But I'll also put a copy of the tariff in the folder so that all of you can do that too, and we can discuss it. And as far as notifying the Commission of deviations to the schedule, I'm not sure. Now that I'm thinking of it, I think that might have actually been in the settlement, not in the tariff itself. But I'll put a copy of the settlement in the folder as well. Does anybody have anything else they want to put on the topic list for tracking?
Yeah, this is Jerry from Summit. I was just wondering if there was some sort of checklist that CenturyLink might provide for, technical specifications for what would a small P center potentially look like, what a large PSAP center would look like in terms of rack space and other things that you need to have ready for them to come in and install this stuff.
This is Kimberly. What we can put in the folder is the spreadsheet that they provided us to complete for each of the PSAPs up here, along with that diagram that shows the rack space and all the hardware that's coming in. This site survey that this Paul Baker did on the walkthrough, it feels like a CPE deployment, so some of it's not truly relevant, but that may help get an idea of what they're going to be looking at. Mm-hmm. If you'd like, we'll just share that over there.
Anything to help us sort of develop expectations.
And Keith Robinson from Gunnison said in the chat earlier, Kimberly, when you were describing what your results were from the walkthrough, he said that Gunnison also had a walkthrough and they had similar results. So it sounds like there's probably not a big difference between large PSAPs and small PSAPs regarding what the backroom requirements are going to be for rack space.
This is Bruce, and I don't want to say 100% sure, but I think it's identical no matter the size.
There's more hardware if you're gonna stay with analog. Then you have more.
Oh, right. If you use the PNG, yes.
Okay, and so this is Jerry from Summit again. So basically, CenturyLink determines what needs to go in the PSAP center, whether it's big or small. That kind of seems interesting to me, but I guess I haven't seen the documentation. But so basically, they pick the hardware, they pick whatever is needed for each PSAP, and then basically they're selling us whatever it is that they need for us to make it work, no matter how big or small the PSAP is.
Well, there's no cost for the equipment other than your tariff fees. So you're not paying for a legacy gateway, for instance. It's part of your tariff fees.
Right, but I mean, somebody is paying for that, right? I'm not paying directly, but obviously somebody is.
Well, we're all paying for the tariff. Yeah. Which is a lot of money, but it's not going to be the CPE equipment. Daryl, do you want me to? I'm emailing you over that PowerPoint. Do you want to put that up?
Sure. Yeah.
That helps so you guys can see it.
Unless, see if I can find, because I know I saved the one you sent me before. I just not sure where I put it.
Yeah, you should have. I just sent it a couple minutes ago, so hopefully it's in your inbox. Maybe.
Not yet. It's in the ether.
If you want to search by name, the name of the PowerPoint is SIP BV-1.
There it is.
Yep.
Let me zoom in a little here.
And that's just pulling up a little bit different. So, but here is the picture of all of the equipment that they're going to be putting in our PSAPs in the back room. Now, if you're a host remote, this equipment would go into the host, but if you're taking 911 calls directly and you've got a DMARC now with your 911 truck, this is the equipment that's coming in.
So in your case, Kimberly, this would not be going into an actual PSAP?
This is
or it would be going to one of your PSAPs?
It's going into 3. So
okay.
I have my 2 large hosts for Collins and Loveland, and then I have Estes Park also doing a local host.
Gotcha.
And then, yep, but it won't go into my 2 remotes. And so if you scroll down one more page, this is kind of a side-by-side. There you go. That's helpful.
So the one on the left is if you're using the legacy PSAP gateway. The one on the right is if you're getting direct SIP.
Right.
Oh, so it will, so where I have more than 12 trunks, I'm going to have 3 legacy gateways. Okay. Which?
If you're going to do legacy versus IP.
Yes. And I'm still trying to decide what I'm doing with that for this year just because of budget, and I didn't have SIP licenses budgeted this year.
So this NIU connection there, this NIU housing, you can see this is the NG911 circuits, and so inside this you're going to have diverse cards, but if this housing goes down, you lose all those cards. You lose everything. So we asked them, why wouldn't you put in 2 NIU housings, put 2 cards in one and 2 cards in the other versus putting 4 cards all in one housing, create some, and that's the kind of conversations that we're having, but I think we need to have it as a group to talk to them and say, you can't have a single point of failure in a piece of equipment that's so critical to the infrastructure.
Right.
This is a question for Kimberly. So where are they requiring the, the single leg for power source, and to what? Is it for the rack or for these NIUs?
It's for the rack for all of their equipment.
Does this PowerPoint have those power requirements as well? I can look them up later, but.
I believe so. If not, then we'll make sure you get that.
So Daryl, this is a question for the group. Are there any other PSAPs that may not have that much rack space available? And if so, what is a plan?
That's a good question. Anyone else out there concerned about rack space?
I
Or
would
space
say,
for them to put in their own cabinet?
Yeah, I don't
sorry,
think that's
go ahead.
going to be a unique scenario. I think when you go around the state and you look at all the PSAPs, there's going to be physical constraints in those back rooms.
Yeah, we're tight in Montrose.
Yeah.
Depending on the CPE update that we choose, we may be able to free up space, but right now we're tight.
This is Paula from Grand Junction, and we're going to be tight with space as well. And we're nodding our heads, Jeremy and I, with you, Kimberly, and your concerns about what's going on with the hardware and the lack of redundancy. So I just wanted to let you know that. I think it should be a good discussion for us going forward, and I think that we need to talk to CenturyLink about it as a group and tell them, and share our concerns to help support where we need to go with, I think, what you're trying to get them to do.
I have the same question, Kimberly, about your description for the redundancy, but was saving that for another time, I guess, when we actually get into the meat of it. Because right now, I think we're just making a list of concerns, right?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to restrict discussion, and Bruce, you can direct this too, but I think this will probably be more productive once we get CenturyLink on the call to respond to some of it.
I agree, but I kind of think that Daryl and Kimberly and I, maybe we need to take this discussion from today and reach out to CenturyLink and get this conversation started instead of waiting a month for the next meeting.
Well, and I think this is also, I agree, Bruce, and I think this is also good to get what everyone, obviously other people have had site surveys, site visits, get all those concerns rolled up in that document. We can talk to CenturyLink about it, and then make sure that they have the right people to address some of these for the next meeting. But now thinking that we scheduled a month out, in a month, in theory, they're going to be down to, you look at the schedule, some of my PSAP's orders are, we're looking at August, so Douglas, Littleton, Longmont, Boulder, Broomfield, all of those should have already been placed in order done. So I think our first order of business is, what are you doing with the schedule? Because you can't.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the whole schedule is basically being blown out by a month or two or more.
Yeah, which they can't do. I mean, without a formal process.
Not without getting agreement in writing from
both parties.
From the 911 authorities, right?
Right.
So yeah, I would support maybe having a smaller group reach out to CenturyLink directly between now and the next meeting to start work on some of these issues so they don't wait a month.
Agreed.
Because Kimberly, you're correct. We don't have a month to wait.
Hey, Daryl, Mike Wallace here. I guess one of the questions I have, I thought CenturyLink was supposed to be at this meeting.
Yes, so that is my fault. I put together a email list of the voting members, and that's how I sent out the meeting invite without realizing that I was accidentally excluding CenturyLink from the list. I let them know about it yesterday, but they didn't have anybody who could attend.
Okay. All right.
Well, do we need to, instead of scheduling the next one a month out, do we need to schedule the next one in a couple of weeks to give us a week to talk to CenturyLink and for us to add to a document and then regroup with CenturyLink with this entire group, like on the 24th?
I was thinking the same thing. Maybe we shouldn't wait a whole month for the next meeting. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
I think that's...
Does the 24th at 10 a.m. work for everyone?
Yeah, I think we're good.
So Bruce, do you support that?
Daryl, it'll work for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That'll work.
So we keep our monthly schedule after that and just say we're going to have two meetings this month, and then next month we'll start with that third Wednesday like we talked about.
Maybe.
Maybe decide that after the next meeting.
Can we say maybe?
Sure.
This is feeling very big and messy right now, and it makes me really uncomfortable.
Okay. Well, for now, we'll say the next meeting is July 24th at 10 a.m. And tentatively, we may have them monthly on the third Wednesday after that.
Hey, Daryl, I know that this can get unwieldy, but in the folder, would it be good to have a folder for each authority? And as we do our site surveys and any information we get from CenturyLink, we can all save it up to those folders and share it. That way I can put all of the site surveys up there. And then anybody who wants to look at the site surveys of what we filled out, they can click on it, use it as a reference point. But then that way it's, just sharing information, because I think there's going to be questions, duplication of work. What can we do to make it easier for everyone?
Well, I can certainly create a folder for any 911 authority that wants to send me their site surveys and other material. And that'd be a way to share it.
Hey, Daryl, where did you put the information that you just were posting on the Google Drive? The presentation and stuff.
I haven't posted that yet. I'll get that in the folder, and then I'll send the link out to everybody again. Right now, the only thing in the folder is the agenda for today, the charter, and a link to the roster. But I'll add all the things we're talking about today. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to the list? Not that we need more, because it's a long list already.
I think that's a good start.
If there are important things that we need to talk about, then we need to talk about them. I don't want to lose them.
So I did ask CenturyLink when the project management hours, because we had our walkthrough, and then we had a follow-up email dialogue, and then we had a follow-up conference call. And just so everyone knows, they can bill us hourly with a cap for the project management hours. And so I think we need to come up with a device to track that. And I know that we plan on logging all of that, but I don't know if we want to also add something in there that's like a spreadsheet that could be tracking those project management hours. They said that the project management hours wouldn't start until they're sitting down with you placing the orders. But we obviously need to be tracking that as well as them tracking it, so we know that the billables are correct.
I can create a spreadsheet to do that. For every 911 authority, how many project hours they've had. Should that spreadsheet also track the individual dates and times that those hours were spent? Or do you want it just like a total for each 911 authority?
Well, there's a lot of money here. So, the project management hours, when you start looking at it, because they can bill, I think, up to 10 hours per 911 trunk, and the hourly rate is pretty high. I would like to know the date and time that they did this, in case anything needs to be scrutinized. Then we can say, well, wait a minute, how are you calculating 10 hours here? Where was that at?
And I agree that every 911 authority should definitely be tracking that. Is that something that this group wants to keep a spreadsheet on as well? I'm not sure that we'll be able to get all that for every 911 authority if they're not participating in the user group, but maybe we can get CenturyLink to give it to us.
On that subject, there was confusion about the basis for that 10 hours during our regional meeting, and I just want to bring up a reminder that it's 10 hours per concurrent session.
Right.
Because some folks were thinking it was per PSAP.
Yeah, nope. There's a lot of money involved on the project management side alone. So it should be excellent, because they're getting compensated very well for it.
Well, I'll put together a spreadsheet for that, and then if anybody has any suggestions on how to improve that spreadsheet, we can talk about that in our next meeting in 2 weeks. So we've talked quite a bit about topics for future discussion, and we kind of included open discussion as part of that. Is there anything else for open discussion?
Daryl, I just have a plea to everybody to reach out and touch somebody who's not here, a 911 authority that did not get on the call today. So even if it's reaching out and just encouraging them to get involved or encouraging them to give you their proxy so they can be represented, it just really makes me concerned that we only had maybe up to 20 by the time the call started, 20 authorities represented today.
I've got 19 right now. And yeah, that is low. And me and Wes Horn from CenturyLink and Monica Million have been doing regional meetings around the state to kind of make sure that those, especially the rural authorities who are not part of the tariff negotiations at all and don't come to the task force meetings, are aware that this is coming. And a lot of them have been fairly surprised at the price increase that they have to now plan for. So hopefully, as we continue those meetings, maybe we can get more people to participate, because talking up these ESInet users group meetings is one of the topics of those regional meetings. Anything else for open discussion? Okay. Bruce, do you have anything you would like to close with?
No, I appreciate the participation today, and Kimberly, thanks for that suggestion to reach out. I've already done that with one other authority as you were speaking of it. So thank you, and good idea.
Yeah, I think if everybody reaches out to their neighbors, because we've got a lot of regionally diverse participation on this call, even if it's not a large percentage of the authorities. So if everyone reaches out to their neighbors, we should be able to get a lot more on the next call. And I will also, when I set up the invite, I will also send out the agenda over the general 911 listserv, not just to the voting members, to those 911 authorities that maybe haven't given me a voting member yet. They'll at least be aware of the call. All right, anything else? With that, I think we are adjourned, and be watching for a meeting invite for July 24th.
Right on.
Great. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.